Okay guys, so now we are going to talk about ratio and proportion, and I'm going to solve some problem for you and help you to figure it out and trying to explain to you what you need to remember when you want to solve that kind of problem. So in this section 18.1, we are page 502, and I'm going to try to solve problem number 6. So I'm going to take my blue, there we go, and on this problem number 6, express the ratio in the simplest form, and we have 120 seconds to 4 minutes. So we don't have the same unit, we have second and we have minutes. So we can express 120 seconds into minutes, or we can express minute into second. If I decide to express 120 seconds into minutes, I know that once 1 minute corresponds to 60 seconds, so 120 seconds will correspond to what? Well, I know you know how to find that, but it's always the same thing. First of all, I know I will have a minute right here. I am going to find x by multiplying always the diagonal where I have the two numbers. So it's going to be 1 times 120, and I will divide by the last number, which is 60. And obviously, it's going to be 2 minutes, but I know you know that already. But I really want to insist when you are trying to convert, this is always the same process. So if the answer is not obvious, you should try to do always what I just presented you. So now we have 2 minutes to 4 minutes, and the ratio is going to be 2 divided by 4, which is 1/2. Problem number 7, actually I'm going to do problem number 8. So if I do the problem number 8, we have 25 square centimeter corresponding to, not corresponding to a ratio to 75 square millimeters. So obviously you will have to convert centimeter into millimeter or millimeter into centimeter. So first of all, you should know your table. And what is this table? This table is starting with square meter, and then we have deci square meter, then you have centi square meter, and finally you will have millimeter, milli square meter. All right, so I'm going to try to convert 75 square millimeter into centimeter. So it's going to be equal to how many centi square meter? For that, I'm going to recognize that 5 is the number of unit, and the first column right here, the first column of each big column correspond of the column of the unit. So 5 should be in the column of the unit of square millimeter, so 5 should be here, therefore 7 should be right there. 75 square millimeter, the dot is right here. Okay? And I want to have that into a square centimeter, so I'm going to, I will have to move my dot right there. And if I move my dot right there, now, it gives me 0.75 square centimeter, 0.75 square centimeter. And now, obviously, I will have to make the calculation, which is going to the ratio, which is going to be 25 over 0.75. You can take your calculator and you will find the answer. And the answer is going to be 33.33. Now, what we could have done also is recognize that 0.75 is equal to 3/4. Okay? So therefore, my ratio is equal to 25 divided by 3/4. What do I have right here? It's the equivalent of a fraction 25/1, which is equal to 25, divided by another fraction, 3/4. when you have the division of two fractions, the division of two fractions, a fraction on your numerator and a fraction in your denominator, you will rewrite your fraction on your numerator over 1. You will convert the main fraction bar into a multiplication, and you will flip the second fraction, which is the fraction in your denominator. And then you end up to have a 100 divided by 3, which is going to be equal to 33.33. So if the question is to give the answer under a fraction or decimal, this is how you would do it. All right, so now let's jump on the problem number 15. What do we have on this problem number 15? So every time you have a word problem, you must pay attention on how to read your problem in order to make this problem interesting. If it is interesting, this is the beginning where it is the moment where you will be able to have the beginning of the spark of an idea. So let's read the problem together. The coefficient of friction for two contacting surfaces is the ratio of the frictional force between them to the perpendicular force that presses them together. If it takes 450 Newton to overcome the move a 1.10 kilonewton crate along the floor, what is the coefficient of friction between the crate and the floor? So first, they are giving you a picture, so let's draw a picture. We have the floor. This is the floor. We have an object. And we have two forces. We have the perpendicular forces, which is pressing the object against the floor. So we have a perpendicular forces. And they are telling you that forces that I'm going to write forces with a capital F, and I'm going to use the letter F, capital F, every time I'm going to talk about this force. And this force is equal to 1.10 kilonewton. On the other hand, they are talking to you about a frictional force, which is going to be this force, and frictional, and for the frictional force, I'm going to use lowercase f, and they are telling you that this force is 450 Newton. Now, they are now obviously reminding you that the coefficient of friction, so let's write coefficient of friction, and let's decide which letter I'm going to use every time I'm going to talk about this coefficient of friction. So I decide to call CF for coefficient of friction. They are telling you that the coefficient of friction is the ratio of the frictional force between the two surfaces to the perpendicular force. So obviously they are telling you that the coefficient of friction is equal to F divided by the perpendicular force. The problem we have is we don't have the same, we have the same unit, but they are not expressed exactly the same. One is in Newton, the other is in kilonewton. So that implies that the first thing I must do is convert kilonewton into Newton. For that, I'm going to use my table. And my table is telling me that if I have Newton right here, decanewton, hectonewton, and I will have kilonewton, which is basically 1000 Newton. Why? Because if that is the column of the unit, 1 Newton is right here, 1000 Newton, and I can clearly see that 1000 Newton is equal to 1 Newton, 1000 Newton is equal to 1 kilonewton. Okay? So Now, if I want to convert 1.1 kilonewton, this 1 is the number of unit. So I need to go in the column of unit of kilonewton, which is right here, 1.1. And I want to transform that into newton. So that means I want to take this dot and put the dot just right there, which is corresponding to the column of unit of newton. Therefore, now that I move my dot, the only thing that I still have to do is to fill up with 0 up to the point I will be on my column of newton. And I can clearly say that the force F is equal to 1,100 newton. Now I can clearly calculate the coefficient of friction. The coefficient of friction will be equal to 450 divided by 1100, and the answer is going to be 0.409, and I let the other numbers, so I could approximate the answer as 0.41. All right, let's try to do one more problem. So let's try to do problem number 28. In this problem number 28, what do we have? We have two connected gears, and they are telling you that D1 over D2 equal N1 over N2. And they are also telling you that where D is the diameter of the gear and N is the number of the teeth, find N1. So the question is find N1. Knowing that D1 is equal to 2.60 inches, that D2 is equal to, so our D2 is equal to 11.7 inches, and they are telling you that N2 is equal to 45 teeth. So what I'm going to do is first, from this formula, I am going to express N1 by itself. If I want to express N1 by himself, that means I will have to isolate N1, and to isolate N1, I will have to get rid of N2. Because N2 is on my denominator, the only way to get rid of N2 is to multiply by N2 to be able to divide out the N2. Because I multiply by N2 on the right side of my equation, I must multiply by N2 on the left side of my equation. Now N2 is equal to, now N1 is equal to N2 multiplied by D1 over D2. If I substitute the value of N2, D1, and D2 in this formula, I end up to have N1 equal to 45 multiplied by 2.6 divided by 11.7. And the answer is going to be 10. If I want to find the gear ratio, which is N2 divided by N1, I will have to end up to do a 45 divided by 10, and the gear ratio will be 4.5. All right, guys, remember that it is very important to well organize your thoughts. Always ask yourself, what is the question? What am I looking for? And how to find the variable they are asking me to find by isolating this variable from the formula that you will end up to find by reading properly your problem. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to jump on to section 18.2.